Hello and welcome to the Black Belt Project. I'm the virtual sensei at BlackBeltProject.com, where I teach you how to master your life one belt at a time. In this episode, I wanted to go over some training rules that we're going to use kind of as our guide at the Black Belt Project on our journey of self-mastery. Now, in the martial arts, you've probably heard the term black belt, and in martial arts, they practice their craft in what's often called a dojo. And in every dojo, there's a set of training rules called the Dojo Kun. And so we're going to call our training rules here at the Black Belt Project the Dojo Kun as well. And so with that, let's get started and go over our training rules. Okay, training rule number 1 at the Black Belt Project is this. I want you to do what you plan to do and then talk about it, rather than to talk about what you want to do and then set out to do it. Now, I made this rule number 1 for a couple of reasons, so let's talk about that a little bit. The first reason is a lot of the self-help material that I've kind of been exposed to over the years has suggested that once you set a goal, that what you should do is share it with other people, and that this revealing of what your plans are to other people will in turn make you accountable to reaching it. You know, it's kind of like once you give your word to someone that you want to keep it. But all too often what happens is that we don't follow through, we don't reach those goals. And so after a while, if we do that often enough, people will start to tune you out and go, yeah, I've heard that before, and I know that that's not going to happen. And so there really is no accountability in sharing your goals with other people. In fact, it's a lot more fun to complete your goal and tell everybody what you did and how you did it than it is to tell everybody what you plan to do, not do it, and then have to explain to people why you didn't do it. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that most of us walk around in kind of a comfort level, and that if we want to do something that's beyond that comfort level in others, then we're not necessarily going to have the support from them that we need in order to achieve that goal. So it creates kind of a negative energy there that kind of works against you. The other thing is that if someone doesn't really support your goal, then in extreme situations, they can kind of try to sabotage it and making it even tougher to reach your goals. So for that reason, too, I suggest that you don't share what you plan to do until you've actually done it. So training rule number 1, and what a black belt does, is they do what they plan to do and then they talk about it rather than the other way around. All right, Black Belt Project training rule number 2 is a commitment to get everything out of your head and into either a paper system or into an electronic system that can relieve our minds of the storage responsibility of everything that we need to remember. And the reason is because we need our mind to work on solving problems and not to be a storage device. And if you're like me, I bought a number of computers over the years, and all of them worked great when I bought them. But after a while, they began to run sluggish because they had more to remember. They just weren't as efficient. And that's just because the workload was just too much. And so I always had to buy a new computer to kind of expand the storage and the processing power so that it would work as well as it did when I bought the previous one. So we need our mind's full potential to work on solving problems for us, because that's going to be the most important thing we need it to do. And so we need to download anything that we're just storing in there and get it into a system so that we don't have to remember it anymore. The other thing is the hardest part of what we need to do in our Black Belt project is not organizing everything. It's in the actual doing part. And once we take what we need to do and get it down on the paper, maybe in the form of instructions, it helps us define what done looks like. And so once we know what done looks like and we know how long it takes, then it's much easier to do. And so a secondary benefit of getting everything out of our head, including the steps we have to take to do certain tasks, is that that'll make it easier for us to actually do what we need to do once we've got a clear picture of what done looks like and got it into our system. And so black belt training rule number 2 is a black belt gets everything out of their head. Okay, black belt training rule number 3 is to use a concept I call progressive resistance. Now I'm going to define what progressive resistance is case you're not familiar with it, and then how we're going to apply it to the Black Belt Project here. Progressive resistance, I didn't come up with the idea. It's used in weight training all the time. And if someone wants to lift 200 pounds, for example, at the gym, and maybe they can only lift 100, they're not going to just magically go from lifting 100 to 200. They're going to gradually increase the weight over time until they become strong enough to lift 200. So they might go from 100 pounds to 110 pounds. And so we're going to use the same concept at the Black Belt Project, but instead of lifting weights, we're going to use it to do tasks. And so we're going to try and break our tasks down into equal weights. So it takes the same amount of energy to do any specific task, and then progressively add tasks to the amount of tasks that we're already doing to increase our mental strength. And so Black Belt training rule number 3 is to use progressive resistance to increase our mental strength. All right, Black Belt Project rule number 4 is to spend 1 hour each day working on your Black Belt project. Now, if you want to improve something, it takes consistent effort to do that. This is most apparent in improving, our physical strength or losing weight. If we do a little bit today and a little bit next week and then take a couple of months off and then start working on it again, we're just not going to see any results because it's not a consistent, constant focus on improvement. And so each day you're going to need to spend a little bit of time working on your Black Belt project. And the amount of time that I suggest you do that is 1 hour each day. Because when it comes down to improving, mastering your life, it's what you do when no one's looking that's really going to matter the most. And if you don't spend any time by yourself looking at your tasks that you've got to do and how to improve what you're doing, then you're just not going to get any better. So a Black Belt always spends at least an hour a day working on their own personal Black Belt project. Black Belt Project rule number 5 is to start and finish a 30-day self-discipline challenge. So at the beginning of every month, you as a Black Belt will start a 30-day challenge to either stop a bad habit or to instill a good habit into your life. Now, once you've completed it over that 30 days, then you'll continue it beyond the 30 days, but you'll add a second and a third and a fourth self-discipline challenge so that each and every month you're doing something that improves your self-discipline and improves your quality of life. So you as a Black Belt will start and finish a new 30-day self-discipline challenge each and every month. And that's Black Belt Project training rule number 5. Black Belt training rule number 6 is the Black Belt knows at exactly what level of Black Belt they are at any given time. So here's an example. With GTD, there's 5 phases of workflow. There's collection, there's processing, there's organizing, there's reviewing, and doing. And ultimately, a Black Belt would be good at all 5 of those items in workflow. However, when you first start out, you may get really good at collection, but you might stumble when you need to start processing everything that you've collected. So in that case, you'd be a Black Belt at collection. And I could go, hey, what level of Black Belt are you? And you could tell me in your system exactly where and at what level you are. And there would be more than just the GTD 5 phases of workflow. I just use that as an example. But Black Belt Project rule number 6 is that a Black Belt knows exactly at what level of Black Belt they are. And not only that, they're looking to push that out farther each and every week. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the Black Belt training rules that we'll operate under here at the Black Belt Project. So rule number 1 is to do what you plan to do and then talk about it. Rule number 2 is to get everything out of your head. Rule number 3 is to use progressive resistance to improve your mental strength. Rule number 4 is use an hour a day to work on your Black Belt project. Rule number 5 is to use 30-day self-discipline challenges. And finally, rule number 6 is to know where and at what level of Black Belt you are and to look to press that out more and more each and every week. So I hope those training rules give you a little bit more guidance on how to train when you're working on your black belt project. And I'll go into more detail as I start working on my black belt project.